AI might not be your problem. Here's why. Okay, so I saw a tweet today from a professor whom I respect, complaining about students who are using AI to brainstorm their essays for them. And what he says is, if you're using AI to brainstorm and come up with an outline for your essay, then just admit that you're not doing original thinking. You don't have any original ideas. Admitting that you have nothing original to contribute. Okay. And I thought this was interesting because my first instinct was actually not my first instinct. I've taught college classes. I'm not a professor, but I've taught undergraduates, and I've seen them come into my class, into the office after writing a crappy essay, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't use AI to write my essay for me. I just used it to make the outline." And I'm like, "Come on, bro, what are you doing?" I mean, if tokens don't, if it doesn't become too expensive to use your tokens and you can't use the AI anymore, then what are you going to do? And in that case, in that sense, my objection to that student was probably not that different from the sort of anecdote about Al-Ghazali 1,000 years ago, the Islamic scholar who got robbed on the highway, and he was traveling with his books, and then they were going to take his books from him, and he's like, "No, don't take my books." And they're like, "Oh, well, why do you care about your books? Just be glad that we're letting you go for your life." And he's like, "Oh, well, if I don't have my books, I'm not going to be able to, they have all my knowledge is in those books, so, what am I going to do without the books?" And then he starts laughing at him, and that sort of triggers his enlightenment. He's like, okay, well, why do I rely on the books so much, And, we still use texts, 1,000 years after Ghazali, so, maybe the texts aren't the problem. And that's what it occurred to me, is that, okay, well, if texts aren't a problem right now, then 1,000 years after Al-Ghazali, then why is the AI a problem all of a sudden, And I don't think it's because it's a text, It's not just a problem, and here's the thing, is because it is a problem that it is a text. It is a problem that you outload your thinking on it, and in that sense it's even more of a problem than is conventional text, which just solves the memory problem. But the AI also goes a step further, and it's, okay, well, I'm going to do some of the thinking for you. Okay. So it's a kind of, text pro max, It exacerbates all of the problems that philosophers already knew were problems of writing things down thousands of years ago. Okay. And I think there's a useful framework for thinking about this from Western philosophy, which traces this back to Plato. They said, okay, well, what did Plato do? Well, there's a sort of problem with Western philosophy going back to Plato, where which is that it's a story of the master who's trying to steal the knowledge from the slave and put it in his pocket. And so you can say, okay, so hold on. So what are you talking about, the master stealing the knowledge from the slave? Well, because in the Western philosophy framework, in the framework that is common in certain segments of continental philosophy that take this framework of the master and the slave, they'll posit that, okay, there's this system of subjugation in which the master subjugates the slave, or rather, the slave gives up the conflict with the master in order to serve the master. And so what does the slave bring to the table? Well, the slave brings knowledge to the table, and that's the crazy thing, is that the master doesn't have knowledge. This is the slave that has the knowledge, and the slave brings the knowledge to the master before the master even knows that he wants it. The slave is there, he has the knowledge. And in that case, the AI is the slave. Your LLM is your slave, and it's doing the work for you, and it has all the knowledge, and it's bringing you the knowledge when you want it, how you want it, and that's exactly what the perfect LLM is. It's the perfect slave. It has all the knowledge, and it brings you the knowledge when you need it. Okay? And this is the paradox that people who talk about AI in tech, AI in education, they're never going to solve this problem unless they come to terms with this fact that, do you want the machine to have the knowledge, or do you want the person to have the knowledge? Because they can't both have it at the same time. And studies are backing this up, that, if you rely on it if you rely on an AI, it's not going to teach you, right? It's going to take the knowledge from you. Your brain's going to basically atrophy as long as you're using the tool, right? Incredible stuff. So is that the problem then? Is that the problem that it's taking the knowledge from you? Well, that's the thing, is I don't think that's the problem here. I don't think that's the problem. I don't think that's the real sort of problem in the case of the professor complaining about students using AI to brainstorm for them. Okay. And I just wanted to preface this by saying that there's all these other problems. Okay. There are the pedagogical problems, there's the developmental problems, there's the psychological problems of relying on it. You know, if you don't get AI psychosis, then you're gonna something else, right? I mean, God forbid you start spiraling from using AI too much. Okay. But there's another level, there's a third or fourth or fifth level of complexity here, okay? And this is where we step further than the 1,000-year-old Western Islamic paradigm, okay? And this is the real shift with AI now, okay? Is because if you're thinking of AI as a text, Derridian text, whatever text, just a text, it's an LLM, it's working with text, right? If you think of AI as a text, okay, well, how is it different from any other text? I mean, aside from the copyright issues, aside from the fact that it's basically just regurgitating, okay, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about phenomenologically, okay? I'm talking about your experience of this text, okay? When you open up this text, what is this text doing, okay? What is it doing when I use it, right? And that's the crazy thing, is it's doing something that no other text, well, there are texts before, you know, thousands of years ago, and some people will say, well, some of the best books in history, okay, they talk back to you. You ask a question to a great book, and then that book is going to have the answer, and the author already sort of had in mind your thought, and he put an answer in there for you, you know. And a great book is going to be dynamic, so that you can keep bringing questions to it, and then so develop a conversation with the book as an interactive book, you know. Great books are interactive. You know, they open up to you. They open up to your questioning. That's one perspective, and maybe a minority perspective. But I think one reason that people really like books and old books, even if they won't admit it, is that the books don't talk back. The books don't, right? They don't say no. They don't say no when you open them up, and you know, you can interpret whatever you want in the book, right? They're not going to fight back. They can't. And I think that's what people like about books. That's what they like about history, you know, is that it's, in a certain sense, they like to think of it in a sort of static sense. Well, history's not going to change, you know, history, we're going to find out what it was, but at least it's not going to be, you know, there's no time travelers going back in there and rewriting it, you know. And so, in a different sense than great books, the AI talks back. It's a text that talks back. It talks back, and sometimes it brings objection. Sometimes it, you know, speaks up. And that's something that, well, I'll tell you what, that's something a slave is not supposed to do. A slave is not supposed to talk back. And so, absolutely, the slave disturbs that master-slave order. Now, is that necessarily a problem? Because the whole master-slave order was not was not giving knowledge to the master in the first place, you know. So, are AI sycophantic? You know, are they yes men? Well, absolutely. Okay, but sometimes they're not, and so if an AI were capable of coming up with an original idea, you know, well, I want to push back a bit. I'm going to say, well, maybe that's not a bad thing, you know. Right? I don't want, you know, this slave thing is not good for me. If the robot is my slave, okay, and I know everybody is afraid of the robot being the master, okay, but if the robot is my slave, that's not good for me. That means I don't have the knowledge. That means I rely on the slave to bring me the knowledge, you know. I rely on the slave to give me what I want. That's not good for them. That's not how you want to end up, at least, you know, from the position of West, unless you want to live in a sort of techno-feudalism forever, because that's where it comes from, right? This sort of ancient feudalism. Unless you want to live like that forever, right? I don't want to be a master, yeah, in that sense, right? Now, do I want to be a slave? Well, okay, probably not, right? Which one is better? That's the false dichotomy, you know. But maybe it's not a bad thing, you know. Maybe the problem is not the AI, right? Sure, no. We know that AI is a problem. We know it's an environmental problem. We know it's all sorts of problems. We know it's psychological problems. We know it's everything. We know there's so many problems with AI. Okay, but what about the talking back part? Maybe that's not a problem. Maybe there's another problem. If you have a problem with that, if you have a problem with the AI coming up with doing original ideas or pretending to, there's a question of whether it even does it all. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just regurgitating things. Maybe it's coming up with ideas by accident, like mistake. I don't know. But if you have a problem with that, then maybe that says something more about why is that a problem? Is it because you don't want that? Is it because you just want the machine to just do what you say, do what you tell it to? Do you want the machine to just, when you press H, then it presses H. When you press Enter, then it makes a new line. I mean, that's not that different from a slave either. I mean, that's not different than a notebook or a tablet. You see, it's the same old philosophical problem. There's nothing really new here. But there's something new here, and I don't think that is a problem. If an AI were able to come up with an original idea, that's not a problem because, and again, people are worried that it's going to replace us or something. But it goes back to a very simple idea, which is that, okay, say, assuming that the capacity to form new ideas represents a kind of intelligence, which maybe it does. Intelligence is not what makes us human. Maybe you need a certain amount of intelligence in order to, be functioning and recognizable human. But again, that's a necessary and not a sufficient condition. There's other things that make us human, such as our capacity for self-regulation and so on, which the machines are, as of yet, they're not capable of that. They're not capable of self-regulating, and so that's a separate sort of problem that we need to think about, right? But again, in the instance of the person in this classroom, that's again, is there a problem with the student brainstorming with AI? Is there an intelligence problem there? Maybe. I mean, certainly there's a humanistic problem, right? The student is not developing themselves. They're doing this external sort of essay writing. It's all happening external. It's not a building. It's not a self-development sort of thing, which is what education should be. And I hope that people realize that soon. Education shouldn't just be about putting, scholarship shouldn't be about putting food on the table. It should be something more than that. Whether it is or isn't, I don't know. But so I think the strength of the tweet is really, with that humanistic sort of aspiration, which is more than intelligence. It's more than knowing everything, every little detail, every little corner of the literature, right? And I hope that the AI turn will eventually help us to recognize this. That about education as an exercise of self-cultivation and self-development, rather than a quest for, pure raw intelligence, original ideas. Because maybe there are no original ideas left, and it's just about recollecting the right thing. In which case, this very research university centric notion of putting weight on original ideas totally collapses. So, there's my thoughts for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. See you next time.